Hello, everyone, and welcome to Data on the Rocks Take Two. Myself, Nazim Al. I have Kiefer Lopes with me here, recognizable name and voice, Zulfikar Surbatan, and Wakil Badu. And we also have two guests with us tonight, Dave Karan and Elissa Anderson. So, our podcast tonight is centered around the topic Does IT project success last? How projects decay after go live? So this is one of those key things that you talk about in this key debate in project management. Like if a project is be delivered successfully, one would assume that it would also deliver value or be successful when it's deployed in the organization. However, there's often debate what success means. Like does the value it starts to deliver when it goes live, does that continue into the entire lifespan of the project? And that's going to be our central discussion tonight. So anyone wants to jump in?
Hey, good night, guys. Yeah, this is a very interesting topic. I remember when I was working at a government organization, I love putting this project that I did on my CV. And looking back at it now, when I speak to the current IT and I ask, very proudly, how's the project going? How is, um, there was this one time when he's like, oh, we don't use that solution anymore. Um, the staff end up rejecting it, new staff, the staff that was trained before on the solution end up leaving, and there was new staff and it was never adopted. Um, they face this resistance to inherit the solution that they came and met, and they decide to pivot to whatever was comfortable to them. And now I am faced with the challenge of, do I still keep um that project on my CV? Was it still successful? You know,
Yeah,
that's my
because you delivered something that was functional, right? Like you designed, you implemented something that was successful. It was a viable product. It wasn't something at a beta version or beta testing, but it was successful. So, like, what happened between when it went live and the months and the years that follow? Could it
Right.
be? Yeah, one of the things that I thought in my mind when we started this topic is that there was urgency while the product was being developed. There was urgency when it was implemented. But once your product champion, your project champion, and so on leaves the project, that urgency disappears. And maybe the application was not given the attention over time. It was not properly maintained, and then that contributed to it losing value over time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's good night. I think your example, Kiefer, it speaks of poor user adoption, you know. Perhaps you did
Mhm.
a good job, you did deliver value, but then training, or probably there wasn't someone to really champion the cause for everybody to really realize the benefits that the system offer. And so as those users probably moved on, then probably they didn't had enough training or so, so the others didn't see the benefit or the value in using it. So it's probably the issue there.
Mm, mm.
Hi guys,
These
good
things
night.
can also, oh,
Yeah, Kiefer, continue.
I was gonna say these things also happen because, environmental drift. Well, not in that case, but sometimes the businesses change, regulations change. Uh, the system that fit back then when I was there probably doesn't fit now. We studied this whole um business process re-engineering, the solution that fit the business process back then. Maybe the company decided to go in a whole nother direction,
Wrong
Yeah,
time,
that could
wrong
be.
place.
wrong time,
Yeah.
wrong place.
One other thing what I feel that could also be an issue is that after the project, you took ownership after the project. Now, I say that there was a lack of continuous ownership after the project was
Mhm.
completed. So after you did your part and you moved on to another organization, the person who took over from you didn't continue the ownership to push the project and ensure that it's still going smoothly. Everyone is using the application how it's supposed to be used, or if there's any issues, resolve the issues and so forth. So there's like no clear product owner, and then that causes strategic direction for the organization to change, and the system becomes reactive instead of a proactive system.
Yeah, that's like turnover and loss of institutional memory, where the people who understood why the system worked the way it does, um, are no longer there, and there was no one put in place to inherit the system,
Right. So,
or
so it asks the question, who is responsible? Who's responsible for ensuring, sustainability of the system?
Yeah, there was
The-
nobody there, no product owner there to take over and keep it going, championing it and so on. Zulfikar, you want to say something?
yeah, it's not that alone. Ownership alone is training, governance, maintenance, all those questions. It could be difficult questions also. Is this still solving the original problem? Are users still actually using it? Those types of questions.
Yeah. So while we can speculate on that. So one of the things that I found while doing some research for this here is that there's a great in project management. There's a distinction between project success and product success. So what Kiefer did, he delivered a project, right? It was successful because it launched and within all boundaries and so on. But was the product successful, right? And one of the things that you there are three components of product success according to the Lothario 2024. It has to meet the owner's strategic objectives, satisfies end user needs, satisfying stakeholder needs, and must continuously deliver value. So it might have worked when he just started, when it was just implemented, but what happened afterwards? Was the product even aligned with their strategic direction? Or if you could take a step back, was there any direction in the organization, or was there just there, like we mentioned, organizational drift? Were they just there in operation for the sake of being an entity, right? So like, how do you gauge success then?
I want to say that you can gauge it from the benefits that are materialized, because I can give another example where um as a solutions manager, we would pitch to these customers, um take this product, take this BES S solution, and this is going to be your projected ROI, and the efficiency that you would gain based on some type of forecast, and we would sell it to the customer, and that would be a project on its own, and we would classify that as a successful project. But then you would find out years like after the EUX life cycle has ended for that product, you would ask the customer, it's time to upgrade because this product is reaching its end of life. But you would hear sometimes, oh, we never even installed that thing was just placed in a room, so the benefits were never materialized. Um, and our project that we deemed a success, we now have to go back to the drawing board, because selling the project is just one phase, but the implementation and proper integration of the product we want to supply the customer with is also important.
Yeah, but in that case, right, like in that particular case where you were before, like you're kind of hamstrung by that. Like you were just paid to deliver a solution, but it was the organization that had to take over afterwards. Which then brings another question, like when this changeover happens from project to product, like when it transfer the hands from the project management team or your sales team, like how long should that cooperation be there to ensure that whatever you delivered it actually is being implemented, and if there's any issue. It reminded me like the first time I went to the dentist to get a cleaning. Horrible experience, by the way. Like 2 days later, I got a call from the dentist asking what was happening, and initially I thought like the man like give me something wrong, or the man misdiagnosed me or pulled the wrong teeth or something, but it was just to find out what's happening. Told them like the mouthwash he gave me is a terrible thing. But then they kept finding out a few like 2 weeks after, constantly finding out how I'm doing, and then they said, okay, you can stop using the mouthwash, go back to your regular one. So at least somewhere when you hand over your solution, the project team would be there, but it can't be there indefinitely. This is the business at the end of the day, and at some time their contract expires. So the impetus is then on the organization to continue with its product and ensure that it delivers value.
The thing is, the complex part of my situation is projects are normally formed in as like a catalog. So there are multiple moving parts. So the entirety of the project or the entirety of the catalog might look good, but then there are these mini projects in between that can be deemed as unsuccessful.
Yeah, in that
So
case, you have your multiple projects and then they're part of a program, which means they're part of a portfolio. Yes, Wakil, this isn't a Zoom class, right? You can unmute.
No, man, yeah, you guys were going with a speed there. I didn't felt like if I jumped in, I might have cut off the conversation. But to add to what a project is, when you undertake certain projects, whether it be medium scale to large scale, you will notice that certain tasks you take on become their own mini tasks, or in this case here, a mini project. For example, when I had to undertake for the uh projects tracking for my department, I had to work on the cultural shift for the entire department. And that alone was designing government structure, having a face-to-face with each individual for each unit, having to sit down to make them feel like, okay, the product they're having here is not something being forced on them because executive made the decision that this has to be done. It has to be something that they themselves was willing to jump on board with to contribute. And what people fail to realize is that when you look at a project as one big thing, you fail to see it as individual gears or parts that makes it into ecosystem. Because if you don't work, like for example, when you're selling software to big companies, you can sell it to the executives and they buy like a 10 license and you get in. But after that, you see the users, which are the staff members, they're complaining, this is not what we want. This doesn't do nothing much. It's giving me more work. And you don't have more business with that company. However, if you're able to get both the user as the purchaser, which is the executive, and the user who is consuming the good on a regular day-to-day business, you're able to formulate an understanding of the project from the highlights of what executive wants and to the low grounds on how things are executed on a day-to-day.
Yeah, what you described there is sort of like system thinking, right? You're not thinking of a project being done in isolation. You're thinking it as part of, you're thinking it as a larger part of the organization. Everything is interconnected. And in that sense, it might help to ensure that your project after it goes live or after it's been delivered, that it actually is interconnected in the wider organization so that it can keep going. Right. However, what can happen in such a case, it might get sucked up or it might be consumed by other things going on in the organization, other larger projects that are happening.
But when you say go live, right, Gani?
Mm.
Um, Going live is not the finish line, as we know. I feel it's more like value, having the project bringing value to the organization, like Kifa said earlier, and satisfaction also to the stakeholders.
Yeah, and that value thing there, that is like um, one of the core principle between PM Box 6 and 7 is one, the PM Box 6 talks about delivering your product, on time, within scope, within cost, and then, quality and so on. But then PM Box 7 talks about delivering value. Now that means your project must not just be successful in delivery, but also contribute to the organization by making it useful, contribute to strategic direction. But one of the things about PMBOK 7 and quite a lot of things in PMBOK 7 is it's not as prescriptive as PMBOK 6. So it's open for interpretation, right? So you can deliver a product and then people use it, but then they're not using it to its full potential. Then how do you gauge success? Then how do you gauge value that you've delivered in your product?
There's something that there needs to be more like classification and determination on how would you determine the value, how you determine to use it. One example of, I would say, a successful project after go live is not IT related, but for me, this echoes to Ogle Highway that was done recently. When the road was built and these bridges, everybody started to use it. After some time now, where they had some small bridges, the road started to drop. Um, when that was noticed, now the contractors they took the initiative and they capped over those areas that are faulty. So they continuously did work. For me, what I saw is that they continuously did work, and they they improved they look at the areas where it was faulty, and they fixed it. And that was based on feedback and observations that was done by them and persons as well. So feedback is also something important to help fix the post go live as well.
Yeah, and that's an extension of change management further than the project when the project concludes. Like one of the things that the research tells us about this particular area is that for you to, you know, have your product be useful in your organization after it's been deployed is to have an extension of change management. So whatever change management you have, you don't just, you know, shut it down after a few weeks or a few months when your product goes live. You keep it for an extended period of time. And I think you keep it for an extended period of time until such a time that the product or the project or the IS solution has been maintained over a couple of times. And again, like people might think, okay, like you deliver a really good application for an organization, that should be a large percentage to contribute to success and organization impact. But that's not necessarily the way. The most impactful, there's one of the most widely cited research for this comes from DeLon and McLean, and they try to figure out like when you implement IS projects, like what are the contributing factors towards organizational impact, right? And they found five contributing factors, and I want you to listen to them and tell me which one is the solution. They said the system quality, the information quality, the system use, user satisfaction, and individual impact. So of those five, maybe just one or two of them has to actually do with the system itself, while there are many other individual factors that contribute to its impact. So you can have a really great, a really great solution, but there are other consideration that determines whether it's going to deliver value or not.
Yeah, that's actually really good. Eh, um, I was gonna say, when success is hard to identify, maybe just start off with the benefits that you promise, because in order to get the project, or in order to um for the project to start, there must have been some kind of justification for spending the money. So maybe use that as the benchmark, or even if you can use your baseline, if maybe use a proxy, the adoption as a proxy for measurement. As you said before, usage. When you can identify your baseline, you can use adoption as a proxy in the event.
Yeah.
I guess added to that as well, the whole probably have some performance metrics, based on those requirements that were set out, must have some way to be able to measure them to see in terms of if it's meeting all the requirements and so that might be another good way to gauge the project along with maintenance and upgrades and the kind of thing to ensure that the project life extends beyond the go live date.
Yeah, that's true. Like you don't have any data collection happening to know whether like how it's being used, like how many reports of issue to the help desk was recorded, or how much usage, how much downtime. And then after you've delivered that product, you spend quite a lot of money on it. You wouldn't want to spend too much more to maintain it over time. Right? So all of those they might is reason why they might not give maintenance of the product after it's been delivered.
Yeah, and that's why it's also important to capture the state before implementation, because I can remember cases where we had nothing, no metrics or anything to uh put against to create a benchmark for a solution that we wanted to implement. So everything was from scratch. You just drawing from uh a perceived notion that this is going to make something beneficial, or make something better, but against what, you know?
Yeah, you don't know where you start, so you can't tell how good you are right now. Yeah,
Some
and
results.
you Yeah. So any last contribution from anyone? We'll go around the room. So Dave, any last contribution from you?
For me, I don't have you guys basically covered everything. That but the last thing I wanted to say, Kiefer mentioned it.
Alyssa?
Just to say that I guess it depends on the organization, right? The organization has to work to ensure sustainability, put
Yeah.
measures in place.
I think Kifa.
Yeah, I would say I don't to stop the decay. Maybe we keep measuring. This is just like to highlight some of the stuff that we talked about. I think it was Alyssa saying that keep measuring after the closure. So we keep revisiting the success and reevaluating the success of the project. She also said or hinted towards assigning ownership that outlives the project, you know?
Yeah.
And um something that we should also take into consideration to prevent things like shadow IT is to make the official system easier than the workaround.
Yeah, in that
I
case,
think
they'll be enticed to use it. So, anyways, that brings us to the end of episode 2 of Data on the Rocks. So we thank you for listening. And but before we go, again, just to conclude all the discussion that happened over the last 20 something minutes, IT projects, they can be deemed successful from a project management stance when they've been delivered and they go live. However, true success from the organization perspective is when it stays useful, when it's trusted by its users, when it's secure, and when it remains valuable after it go live. So thank you for listening, and we shall see you guys in episode 3 in a few months' time. Thank you.